Here are some of the common problems that people have with their composting and the easy solutions to them. So most commonly, I hear people complaining of unpleasant odors in their compost, and know that that is a function of having too much green material, too much nitrogen. And so your easy fix there is add more carbon and turn your compost. So whether it's deciduous leaves in the fall that are brown, straw, other materials that are that brown carbon-based addition, that's what you need if you have any kind of unpleasant odors coming from your compost pile. Another common thing is just lots of insects, especially flying insects, and think fruit flies as well. And that's really common and super easy to manage as well. You have a lot of nitrogen materials and a lot of just sweetness. And you probably, in that case, have delicious sweet corn sitting on top of your compost, or maybe they're peach pits, and you haven't turned them in. So easy fix, simply grab your shovel, grab your fork, turn over that compost. Make sure that anything exposed that those fruit flies would be interested in is now buried under the material. You can also add more carbon, and that will do the trick very nicely. Another common thing I have people say, Petra, my compost pile is steaming. What do I do next? It's actually great. That's not a problem at all. Steaming in your compost is indicating that it's actively composting. Materials are breaking down really fast, and literally you're watching the air, pardon me, the water evaporate as your carbon and nitrogen are breaking each other down and forming actual compost rather than just being their separate parts. So yes, steaming compost, not an issue. I often have people talk about soggy composts as well. And that is definitely a little more tricky. You'll see on the bottom of this composting, we have basically a pallet. And when I was a little girl, our compost, we had just a bunch of sticks, like 6 inches of sticks that we would put our compost on, so that it would have some air and aeration and also drainage at the bottom of it. So choosing your site makes all the difference. So if you have a soggy compost and you're looking at it and you're like, oh yeah, I guess the contours of the land, I am like in the bottom of a trough, you might want to just straight up move your compost. But otherwise, just know that moving your compost slightly over to the side, and that's a great opportunity to turn your compost, but putting it on top of limbs, sticks, even a pallet works great. And that way it'll be better drained and have way better airflow as well. And then I also have people that say, well, my compost just isn't composting. Totally valid. And that's very common in home compost because you just might not have that much space and much material that is composting. And so if you don't have that much material, the more material you'll have the compost, the faster it's going to compost. So an opportunity if you do have, if you want to be getting more compost and having it turn faster, just add more materials and be super creative. Anytime you're mowing your lawn, those green clippings can turn into compost. Your newspapers can totally turn into compost. Just look at all the resources we have of all the lists of things that you can totally compost, and don't be shy. Compost everything in sight, and even your neighbor's leaves in the fall when they're just very nicely bagging them and putting them on the side of the road for you to pick up and bring home and add to your compost. Be sure that you're availing yourself of all of those opportunities. If you do pick up leaves on the side of the road, just be sure that you're not picking up, acidic things like pine needles or things like black walnut hulls or shells or leaves. And yeah, those are the most common problems that I hear about with people's composting, and some simple solutions. If you have other problems, let me know. I can't wait to help you find a solution.